Before we begin discussing Avicenna's life and philosophical works, we are going to provide some necessary historical information for the location and time period that Avicenna lived during. Avicenna was born near Bukhara, which is a city located in modern-day Uzbekistan. Before Avicenna was born, Bukhara had been a source of authority where the Abbasids had conquered the Umayyads to become the second caliphate state of the Islamic world. However, by the time Avicenna was born, the Abbasid Caliphate no longer had any control over the Islamic Empire. Now, there were two Persian dynasties that had carried the supposed capability of the Caliph. These groups were the Buyids, who had the primary control of Iran and Iraq, and the Samanid dynasty, who had control over the East. Avicenna's father was a governor for one of the villages of Nun ibn Mansur, who was the Sultan in Bukhara for the Samanid dynasty during this time period, whose reign marked a period of great political instability. By the middle of the 10th century, the Samanid power started to diminish. By the time Avicenna was 20, the Samanid dynasty had lost power, and this fact, combined with the death of his father, marked Avicenna for a life that was filled with moving from one patron to the other in order to continue to support himself financially and politically. During the Samanid Empire's rule, Arabic was replaced with Persian as the official language of the court for the first time since the Arab invasion. These events explain why Avicenna's native language was Persian as opposed to the more dominant language Arabic. Arabic was believed to be the language of God, or Allah, as the Quran was written in Arabic. As a result, most educational and philosophical texts were written in Arabic. All of Avicenna's works were written in Arabic except for one treatise that was written in Persian for this reason.
Although the Abbasids lost their power before Avicenna was born, they played an important role in his philosophical career by ushering in what would come to be known as the Islamic Golden Age. The Islamic Golden Age, beginning in the 8th century with the rise of the Abbasid dynasty and ending in the 13th century with the Mongol invasion of the Islamic world, saw a flourishing of Islamic art, literature, medicine, astronomy, and, most importantly regarding Avicenna and his commentators, philosophy. This era gave the world advancements such as the astrolabe, the camera obscura, algebra, trigonometry, calculus, tin glazing, and the first mental hospitals. During this time period, scholars of the Islamic world took on the task of formally translating the scientific and philosophical works of ancient Greece into Arabic, preserving these texts with the intent of studying them and adding to the knowledge of the Muslim world. The focus on knowledge that arose directly from the Quran, the holy book of Islam, the doctrine of which emphasizes the pursuit of knowledge. The Messenger of Allah said, "Seeking knowledge is a duty upon every Muslim." One of the most obvious ways in which this pursuit manifested was the construction of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad in the 9th century, a little under 200 years before Avicenna was born. This massive library, built by the Abbasids from the library of the previous Umayyad dynasty, invited scholars and philosophers and enabled them to the translation movement. These scholars came from all over the empire, with Jewish and Christian translators working alongside Arabic Muslim ones. It is thanks to these scribes that Arabic translations of philosophers such as Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, Plotinus, and Galen existed for Avicenna to study and comment on in his works.
As touched on before, Abu Ali al-Hussein ibn Sena, known in Europe by the Latinized Avicenna, was born around 980 CE in Afshana, a village in the Samanid Persian Empire. His father, a local governor, moved the family to the capital Bukhara early on in his life, where, using the vast library of the Samanid court and having access to a number of teachers, he gained knowledge of philosophy of law and learnt medicine. By 18, he claimed to have mastered all the sciences, and he soon became a physician in the court of the Samanid ruler, Na ibn Masur. After the death of his father, he possibly took up an administrative position. While in service at Bukhara, he produced his first major works, the Compendium on the Soul and the Philosophy for the Prosodist, both of which examined aspects of classical Greek philosophy. In about 1000, he fled from Bukhara after it was captured by the Karakanids, and as the Samanid Empire itself was mostly divvied up among them and other Turkic conquerors, he traveled about the Persian sphere, and in 1012 eventually found himself in Jurjan in Khorasan. where he met his disciple and scribe, Jizjani. Soon afterward, he came to Ray, where he entered into the service of the Buyid dynasty, again as a physician. He served several patrons during this part of his life, moving from one to the other. The last of these was the Vizier Ala al-Dawla of another Persian dynasty, the Kakuyids. He produces several encyclopedias and philosophical works while under his patronage. He was fairly well known in the region at this point, both for his work in medicine, philosophy, and other pursuits. Avicenna often accompanied the vizier on his military campaigns. During one of these campaigns, he died of colic. After his death, his canon of medicine dominated that field for centuries in both Europe and the Middle East. His philosophical works found an audience in many important Christian thinkers. Dante even included him among the noble pagans in Limbo.
While Avicenna read the works of Greek philosophers, he did not agree completely with all of their ideas. This was especially so in the case of Aristotle and his four causes, which attempted to give general explanations for any event's occurrence. These were the material cause, the physical properties of an object, the formal cause, the structure of an object, the efficient cause, the force that brings an object into being, and the final cause, the ultimate purpose of an object. Avicenna believed that these failed to explain an object's prolonged existence. This gave rise to his added fifth cause, which Avicenna argued was God's will allowing things to continue their existence for more than an instant. This led to Avicenna's unique take on the ontological argument, which hinged on the idea of causal determinism, the idea that every event is caused by another before it, which in turn was caused by something before it. This seemingly infinite causal chain, and all others like it, consisted entirely of events Avicenna determined were possible ones. These were events that can be conceived as to not have happened at all. He then argued that all of the chains of the possible events had to have a cause that was necessary. These necessary causes could not depend on possible causes to come into existence, nor be made of several possible causes. Rather, they had to be either derived from another necessary cause or be completely self-sufficient. Avicenna argued that all possible causes could be traced back to one universal necessary cause, and that this cause had to be God.
Among his contributions of interest, Avicenna proposed a thought experiment we today call the floating ring. This introspective proof goes as follows. We have to suppose a man who accidentally comes into existence fully developed and formed, but he does not have any relation with sensory experience of the world or of his own body. And he has had no physical contact with the external world at all. According to Avicenna, this subject is, nonetheless, necessarily conscious of himself. In other words, such a being possesses the awareness of his own existence. He thereby believes that the soul has an unmediated and reflexive knowledge of its own existence. Thus, appealing to self-consciousness, Avicenna thus proves the existence of a soul. Avicenna's theology on metaphysical issues has been criticized by some notable Islamic scholars such as Al-Ghazali, whom in his work The Incoherence of the Philosophers critiqued Avicenna and his followers' beliefs and, in addition, accusing them of committing heresy. In response to this, the philosopher Averroes, a defendant of Avicenna's views, wrote a refutation of Al-Ghazali's work entitled The Incoherence of the Incoherent, in which he discusses the doctrines of philosophers and criticizes Al-Ghazali's own arguments. In short, Avicenna was a Persian physician and philosopher who profoundly influenced medieval Islamic philosophy.
That's all, folks.